So the YLP is the Young Leaders program that is offered by Indian School of Business. It offers accelerated or advanced admission into the flagship program PGP at ISB. Only pre-final and final year students are eligible to apply for the YLP program, and even if you've graduated and joined a postgrad degree straight away after undergrad without working, you can still apply for the YLP program. And it basically gives you a flexibility of working for 2 to 3 years before you actually join a business school, and so that gives you a sort of certain peace of mind, and you can work stress-free and explore a lot of different avenues before you join a business school. So the requirement for the YLP is that you work for minimum 20 months within 2 years, but it's also the choice is up to you if you want to extend that or defer that by another year. So you can choose to work for 3 years maximum before you actually join the program. And in these 2 or 3 years before you join ISB, you have learning weekend programs, as they call it. So you go to campus 6 times over 6 weekends in the next 2 to 3 years, wherein they conduct a lot of leadership building exercises, relationship building exercises. They have career based tests and personality based tests to help you try and understand your points of strengths and weaknesses and areas of improvements. And there are a lot of also online learning modules that you have access to. So these next 2 or 3 years, you can have experience in almost any field, any industry or sector. It can be in consulting or technology. That has no bearing on the admission result of the YLP program. You can also talk about, if you're passionate about something, you can also talk about having your own startup if you're into entrepreneurship. So they really appreciate you actually chasing your passions. So the companies are agnostic to whether you are from YLP or if you are a PGP candidate with 4 to 5 years of plus experience. So that is not something that you should be concerned about. And apart from ISB, there are a lot of business schools in the US and Europe that offer deferred MBA programs. I think the top ones would be MBA, Stanford, Darden Business School, etc. So those are also really good options that one can look at. So the round 1 deadline is generally always around the last week of March. I think for me it was March 24th or 25th, and it comprises of a round 1 essay. The prompt for my year was to briefly talk about the incident or set of incidences in your life that had the most profound influence on you, and talk about the incident and also the impact that it had on you. So I think the word limit is around 300 words, so you have to use your words judiciously. You can talk about anything professional, academic, and it can also be personal if you feel that it's something that did add value in your life. So it's up to you whatever path you want to go down with. Apart from the round 1 essay, which is the most important aspect of the round 1 application according to me, you also have to upload your resume. It can be a 1-page or a 2-page CV. I think most admissions committee members appreciate it if you wrap it up in 1 page. So that is another point to note. Apart from that, there is an online application portal where you basically have to fill in a lot of general bio information, and you also talk about your internship experiences. So you talk about the name of the organization that you interned at, the roles that you had, the kind of projects that you worked in over there, and you can also talk about your major accomplishments, if you have any national, state level or university level awards and achievements, if you participated in any case study competition and you got 1st or 2nd place. So you have to upload your certificates there. And lastly, there is a place for your technical projects that you have done at university level or somewhere else. So that basically wraps up your round 1, and I think you get around 1 month until March end when the portal closes. So yeah, that's it. So once the round 1 results are announced, like we mentioned, we have around 3.5 or 4 months to prepare for your GRE, LOR and essays. In terms of your GRE preparation, I think firstly you can take GRE or GMAT. It's not like one has more weightage over the other. It has no bearing on your admissions result if you take a GRE or GMAT. Personally, I chose to take GRE because it is accepted by more business schools in case in the future you have a change of mind and you want want to apply to a tech school or information schools, the GRE is accepted by them as well. So that is one of the reasons I took GRE. In terms of the average score, ISB website I think says that it's around 324 or 325, but I would say that given the right preparation, you can easily aim for a 330 plus, and that should put you in a good stead to make up for an even average GPA, which is the next point I want to talk about. People generally think that since we are YLP candidates, they will take a greater look at our GPA scores, but it's not so. ISB takes a holistic look at your entire profile. So in case you have a very average GPA, which was in my case, I had a borderline 8 GPA out of 10, the GRE or GMAT is a great way for you to sort of upstage that and try and establish that you do have a good academic record. You can have a good academic record. So that is one of the major reasons why GRE is so important to your application. And apart from that, since you only have 3 months, it's very important to strategically choose your test date. A lot of students choose to take it in the last week of August, right before the deadline, but you shouldn't really do that because ETS takes their own time to submit the official test score report to the school, and if in case there is a bit of a delay because of whatever reason, the school may not consider your application for that round. So that risk is always attached. So I would say that you should very strategically choose your test date in between those three months, so that you can prepare well as well. And if in case if at all you have to retake your GRE, you have enough sufficient time for that as well. So your round 1 results are announced mostly in April end, and they send an email to inform you that you've been shortlisted for round 2. The deadline for round 2 is August end, August 30th. So that essentially leaves you with 3 or 4 months of preparation to submit your GRE GMAT scores, to submit the round 2 essay, and also submit the LOR. So I think in terms of the essay, the round 2 essay for my year touched more upon my underlying motivations as to why I wanted to pursue an MBA degree and why ISB specifically. So the exact prompt was, what are my long-term and short-term career goals and how does ISB fit into them? So that sort of involves a lot of introspection and reflection on what you really want. They do give a bit of leeway for YLP students specifically because they know you don't really have any work ex, you haven't explored a lot. So you can be a bit no, I wouldn't say vague, but it's appreciated that you have some sort of clarity in terms of your goals, what you want to do. You have an idea of how you want to spend the next 2 or 3 years. It's fine if you want to explore entrepreneurship, but you must have an idea that you have in mind that you're going to be working on solidly for the next 2 or 3 years. Apart from the essay, which is again 300 words, you have your LOR. So for that, I think that is something that works over the longer time. And for YLP specifically, an academic recommendation also works because you might have interned at your organizations or another university only for maybe a couple of months. So the connection that you have may not go that deep, or your contributions may not be that great. So I would recommend reaching out to a professor, academic professor, an HOD that is even better in your department that you may have studied with or taken classes with for a year. So that would set you up in a good place, and inform your recommenders in advance that they will be expecting a link from ISB, because more often than not the professors themselves are also very busy, and even they have to submit their recommendation by the round 2 deadline. So just to make sure that you don't end up keeping up too much for the last few weeks, just inform them beforehand that they'll be having to fill out a questionnaire sort of a thing. And you can definitely book another session. This is what I did. I booked a session with my recommender just to reacquaint him with the kind of work that I have been doing, the classes that I have been taking with him, so they also have a lot of clarity in terms of what they can speak about. You also have to upload your CV for the round 2 application, and generally over the summer students do have their 3rd year or 4th year internship, and that is another point that you can definitely add on your CV and update it. Generally I follow the STAR approach when it comes to any experience that I have, which is basically the situation, task, approach, action and result method. So you speak about the situation that you had, the task that was allocated specifically to you, the action that you then took, and what was the result, what was the impact of you working in a particular organization in a particular role, and how the learnings that you took out of them. So yeah. So you submit your round 2 application by 30th August, and within 2 or 3 weeks they send you an invite for the interview, and there is a gap of essentially 6 or 7 days between the date of the invite and the actual interview. Now you can take the interview via Skype, and now there is a provision for interviewing. If you're, for example, if you're in Mumbai, there you can go to a hotel and interview there with the admissions committee personnel, or you can choose to go to the campus in Hyderabad, which is what I preferred, because that way you can actually get a feel of the entire campus. You can interact with a lot of committee members, professors, current students and alums who are there, get a look at the kind of networking events that are happening there, as well as just enter the classrooms and from the outside take a look at how things are done in a business school. So I went to the campus and it was a really amazing experience. So I went for my interview to the campus, and it is generally taken by a mix of ISB alums as well as the admissions committee members. So there can be 2 or 3 panel members. For me, it was just the ISB alums, and there is usually a 30-minute or a 45-minute slot for your interview, and it starts off very casually. So it's not at all a stress interview or anything. It's very conversational. So once you do enter the interview room, they make you feel entirely comfortable. They introduce themselves and they talk about their experience right from their undergrad to ISB and post ISB, and then they tell you that they've been in your shoes, so there's no need to worry. So it's essentially just a conversation that they're having with you. In terms of the questions that they ask, it majorly revolves around, apart from your basic motivation, why you want to pursue an MBA, why ISB specifically, they focus a lot on your behavioral questions. For example, they'll give you a situation that you might be in, that you might encounter in a B school, how you would react to that. For example, if you're working in a cohort-based assignment and you have a disagreement with your team member, how would you reach an agreement? How would you resolve that conflict? Something along those lines. Then they also touch upon, since ISB is such a rigorous and intensive course, they want to know how well you excel in stressful environments. So that is another question that I was asked. And in terms of the answers that you give, there has to be a connect with the statements that you have mentioned in your SOPs and your essays, because the committee members, the ISB alums, they have a printout of the round 1 and round 2 application that you submitted. So they can, at any point of time, they can refer to your resume, to your LORs, to your extracurriculars and the details that you've mentioned there, just to corroborate if what you've said actually matches up with that. So if there has been some if your goals have evolved or they have changed, you can definitely mention that, but ideally there should not be a discord between what you say and what you have mentioned in your SOPs. So you essentially get around 6 or 7 days maximum to prepare for your interview. So your first go-to strategy should be that you are completely well versed with your resumes and what you've mentioned in your SOP, because they will stick to what the experiences that you've mentioned in your resume. They can be technical, they can be business related, they can be your participation in competitions, they can be anything, but they do go in depth. They want to know your specific contributions, not what your team did, not what you achieved, but exactly what your role was, the kind of skills that were required to accomplish that, etc., etc. So one thing would be, right from your first year onwards, anything that you've mentioned, even from school days, anything that you've mentioned, that is important. Second, I would say, in terms of your even in your extracurriculars and hobbies, for example, I had mentioned that I really like to play football and I was a part of my school or college team. They sort of asked me which position I used to play in, what I like, where I like playing more. So essentially you should be able to back up what you're saying, and even if you've exaggerated a bit on your resume, make sure that you're able to talk through it in a grilling session, because they can easily spot a lie and you can't really hang on to that for too long. So that would be my one advice, that don't exaggerate much. Even if you are doing a little, make sure that you have prepared enough to be able to answer those questions. Second would be the kind of questions that I was asked, apart from behavioral and situational and resume based, were my post ISB goals. So they want to know the kind of industries that you may be looking to get into. For me, I was always very interested in consulting, and I'm working in a consulting firm before joining ISB. So that is something that I mentioned. But they counter questioned me by asking that since it's a very competitive environment and you don't get into a consulting firm of your choice, what would be your plan B? So you should always have done some amount of scenario planning to make sure that you have an option or a safety last resort sort of a thing for yourself. And ISB has a lot of different opportunities. It's not just a consulting school. If you are interested in finance or operations or anything else, even they also have a data science vertical, so that is also something you can get into. So that is another thing that you should be prepared for in your interviews. The other important thing is how you tangibly contribute to the ISB community. That is an important part of the interview, because it's a team, it's a cohort-based school. So the learning is, you have a lot of assignments where you have to work with your teams, and you will be paired with people from different backgrounds. So they want to know how you will be able to contribute to those team learning assignments and what different you bring to the school. So this is the nature of the questions that are asked. They are majorly revolving around what you've mentioned on your CV and your resume, and they don't really throw any googlies at you, and they won't really ask you questions that stump you. So yeah, that's about it. So in terms of the fees and scholarship, I start with the application rounds. You only have to pay a fees for round 1, which is around 3,000 or 4,000. And once you are offered an admission letter, you have to pay a security deposit of 1.2 lakhs within 15 days. So I think they announced the results on 31st October, and by 15th November, end of deadline, you have to pay a fees of 1.2 lakhs, which is non-refundable. In terms of the scholarships, so the entire fees, that is around 35 lakhs or something, that has to be paid at the time of joining. So if it is increased in the next couple of years, you will have to pay the amount which is standing at the year of your joining. In terms of scholarships, there are, I think, 6 different kinds of scholarships. The major ones are the need-based waivers and merit-based waivers. So for merit-based waivers, which are handed out to 40 students, they basically look at holistically your profile, the sustainable academic performance that you had, consistent academic performance, your GRE GMAT scores, your overall application in terms of how your recommendations were, and your extracurricular competitions and your participation if you have a national level certificate or award. In terms of need-based scholarships, they are awarded to those who have a family income of less than 12 lakhs. And apart from this, there is a scholarship for ISEC members, so people who have worked with ISEC for national ISEC, I think the India MC, they get a scholarship of around 5 lakhs, but this is given out to 3 students only. And then there is an international student scholarship as well. So students coming in from other countries who are not citizens of India, they are also given scholarships. In terms of the ISEC scholarships, you do have to write a separate essay for that. There is a Bridge to India scholarship as well. So if you're an Indian but you're working abroad and you want to come back to India, this is not YLP specific, but this is for PGP candidates. You have to write a specific essay to be eligible for the scholarship, but this is also an avenue. And then there is a diversity scholarship, wherein if you have a diverse background, there are a lot of people who come from very non-traditional or offbeat backgrounds that you would think, so it is awarded to those. So in terms of the amount of the waivers, the need-based and merit-based scholarships are given to 40 students each. For merit-based waivers, it can be from 5 lakhs to the full tuition fees is waived off, and that the decision is upon the discretion of the admissions committee. For need-based waivers, the amount is only 5 lakhs is waived off, and for all the other categories of waivers, it is similarly 5 lakhs to varying amounts up until your full tuition fees, and the decision lies with the admissions committee. So in terms of the useful tips that I can give based on my experience, I would say first and foremost, attend all the virtual information sessions that are conducted by ISB. So you can find that information on their website. They have a certain link called view upcoming events, and you can register yourself. They'll send you reminders and stuff. So they are about a half an hour or an hour long, and the admissions committee talks about the program in length, the course description, the kind of curriculum that they have, your post ISB opportunities, how you can try and stand out from the applicant pool. These kinds of admission tips are also given out. So that is pretty great, and it had really helped me out to follow that. And from my experience, I think what helps you stand out is trying to bring out your leadership attributes. So if you're even in your pre-final year, if you have participated in any college committee, if you've been a part of that council, student council, or if you've organized any cultural fest or tech fest and you've held any position of responsibility, talk about that. If you've managed a few people, talk about those experiences and what you gained out of it and what you learned out of it. And I think the most important thing after those, displaying your leadership attributes, it comes down to your communication abilities. So especially in the interviews, you have to make sure that you are able to answer in a crisp and concise manner. Just don't make sure that you don't yabber on if they've asked you one thing and you're answering something else. That doesn't really look well. So having the right communication abilities and interfacing skills, that also goes a long way. And lastly, I would say just maintain that connect with the admissions committee. So be inquisitive. There are a lot of things that you can, if you haven't applied yet, that you can get to know about the committee. So express your interest. There are also, apart from these virtual sessions, I think ISB participates with the MBA tour, which happens in all cities in India. So that way you can meet in person with the admissions committee, the director of the admissions committee. I think even he travels. So that is another great way to get first-hand visibility into the school and try and figure out if it's actually the right business school for you, because it's, at the end of the day, it is a big investment of your time. So before you start out with any of this, or even throughout your application, you always have the opportunity to connect with the school, and ISB really tries its best to be in the position to connect with the students.